I'd like to first of all introduce Dyane.
Thank you for that welcome. I'm Dyane Hosler from the National Library in Christchurch, and I'm going to follow on the Christchurch theme of earthquakes. But before I start, I'll just pick up on a couple of points that were made in the last sessions. Firstly, in terms of social media, following the earthquake, social media was secondary to us. We had no electricity. The cell phone lines were jammed. And so there was no access to any type of communication for quite a while. When it did come back on, I had family members text me or call me and says, "Oh, it's so awful what's happened in Christchurch. I've seen it on TV." For us, we had no electricity, so we had no actually idea what they were seeing. They were seeing more than what we actually knew. So this session is going to focus on the impact of people, and really the focus is on family, yourself, safety, and looking after neighbours, etc. This photo, as Jenny also had it in her slide, was taken from the Kashmir Hills just directly following the earthquake, and it's been captured, I think, on YouTube and everywhere around the world, and the woman who took it actually didn't put any rights on it, so she could have actually made a lot of money from it. No, maybe it's the wrong way. Okay. This is the library I worked in pre and post the February the 22nd earthquake. We have a library collection that serves all the schools in the South Island, and there's 700 schools, all the schools and also homeschooling families. So either the teachers from those schools come in and select the resources, or we send the resources out to them. The collection was about 130,000. After the September earthquake, we practiced evacuation procedures. We became familiar with our policies. We didn't read them in depth, we became familiar. We bought a hooter. So our person in charge would sound the hooter if an earthquake came. What we didn't realise is that he wouldn't necessarily be next to the hooter when an earthquake struck. But we evacuated safely. There was no injuries. I guess thanks to the training and thanks to knowing what to do. We had decided that we would act on instinct. If people felt like getting under their desk, they would do that. Those who felt they needed to run would do that. And there were those who simply froze and they had to be helped by others. So self-organisation takes over. Policies go out the door. You almost rely on your instincts, but knowing what you almost need to do. We were a 2-storey building. The collection was downstairs and the workspaces and seminar rooms were upstairs. This was later. Our building was finally demolished in September 2011, so 5 months following the earthquake. It took 3 months to demolish because they had to bring in these machines, as Jenny had in her slides. It's kind of like a crunchy, like dinosaur machine that would actually crunch up the steel itself. It was a horrible machine to watch. What we all found was the importance of self, as I said before, that once we evacuated from the building, it was counting, are we all out safely? Yes. Okay, how do we get home? Everyone wanted to flee home to make sure their family was safe, and that was important. We weren't talking about work or times or what are you going to do tomorrow, but the lessons we learned is always have your car keys in your pocket, because if you evacuate the building and your car keys are in your office and you can't get back into the building, the car actually stays there for a long time. Also, always have your cell phone in your pocket. Really, really important. And as we have learned, as possibly Jenny has learned, is to have full contact details, cell phones and home lines and next of kin at home as well as at work. And none of us really had that before. We had it at work but not at home. Also to have your spare work car keys at home as well. We had to pay, I think, almost $1,000 a car to have new keys cut because of this. Another thing we learnt was to, because we weren't allowed back into the building for a long time is to take note of all your shelving configurations. How many bays of fiction or non-fiction do you have? What are the heights? How many face-outs do you have? Which seems kind of bland, but when you have to set up from scratch again, it's actually quite helpful. Also to have all those passwords at home as well, or somewhere on a server, but somewhere. Our environment changed. It changed dramatically. A block down from our National Library building, it was cordoned off and we had cool-looking army guys watching. For many people, family situations changed. Lots of staff became stressed and showed this in different forms. One colleague, her husband was a policeman and the police building was on a lean, but nobody really wanted to recognise that because where would they go? They've now been evacuated to another building. For many other people, schooling was an issue with children, and I'll pick up on that later. For some other colleagues, their elderly parents had to leave their homes, and so there was a worry what to do with the elderly parents. There was changes to getting to work. Buses didn't run anymore, the routes changed, and it took hours to get across the city. Many colleagues had family members that were sick or depressed or emotionally exhausted. And staff were all stressed to various degrees. There were some staff I thought would be incredibly strong, and after a while they weren't. Others I thought that would be weak but were strong, and that was an ever-changing beast. For the first 3 weeks following the earthquake, it was sheer hell. To date, I think we've had 10,000 aftershocks. It's ongoing. It's lessening, but it's ongoing. We would never wish it on anyone, though we have learnt a lot from it. This is Hagley Park, our beloved park in Christchurch. I was taking a walk with my son shortly afterwards. Hagley Park was preparing for a huge garden show, and this container was full of, items for the garden show. Liquefaction hit the city, so this enormous old tree was just lifted out, roots and all. Luckily, no one was in the container. Following the February earthquake, there was no work for 3 weeks, and normally you'd go, yay, I can be at home. But of course, no. We were all in a state of anxiety, I guess. Schools were closed. Some staff volunteered at in various areas. I had a colleague who volunteered for the student army. So this was the university students who are normally seen as louts, kind of gathered together, organised themselves on Facebook, and set up with wheelbarrows and helped people shovel the liquefaction, the mud from their homes. I actually helped with my husband at the Civil Defence headquarters, so I didn't actually see Jenny, of course, at all. He was working in the hospitality part, so just feeding all those civil defence workers who just came through. Schools were closed for 3 weeks. Public libraries were closed for a long time as well, and 4 public libraries are still closed. But the public libraries, once they opened, became those community meeting places. They had the free Wi-Fi. People could go there. They felt comfortable. Many of the recreational facilities were out of commission. Lots of the gyms and swimming pools had cracks in them. My son is a tennis player. Lots of the tennis courts had huge cracks across them. And hockey turfs, of course, were also damaged. So this has had an effect on the sporting arena and the elite athletes in Christchurch. Shopping centres were closed. And even today, nobody wants to park in the basement or on the top floor. You can always get a park there. Now a sense of norm is returning, but it's a different sense of normal. Jenny was saying her work is in the CBD. My work is now in the suburbs. I don't go to the CBD at all. But pop-up shops have emerged. A colleague lives in New Brighton, which is by the sea, and New Brighton was hit by liquefaction. So liquefaction, I'm not very scientific here, but it's where the water table is very close to the surface, And during the shaking, the water kind of erupts up and bubbles up. So this was her street for a long while. Now she says it's an awful street. She said it used to be a pleasant street. Lots of houses are shut up and will be demolished. And it's just turned into a totally different street. Many of the houses, the piles shifted or sank, and contents, of course, were damaged. What we found, and if you're a manager here, what was important is sometimes the out-of-town managers would say, I know how you must feel, or now that it's over, we can move on. For many people, and for Michelle living here, it wasn't over, and it won't be over for a long time. So I guess a lesson for managers is be supportive, listen, ask how you can assist, make the efforts and be visible. Take the anger and just listen, put in the time. Now, Jenny was saying she was at this house a week before the earthquake. This is in Sumner, the cliffs overlooking a beautiful beach, and the house is just falling down the cliff. As a team leader, I saw my role was to contact staff on a regular basis while we weren't working, to update them on what was happening and to give them a sense to find where their emotional state was at. I communicated to them in various means. Some had electricity, so I could use the phone. Some I was just texting or short bursts on the cell phone. Michelle, who lived in New Brighton, was on a generator, so for her it was just short bursts of quick conversation. So I had to work out what was best for which staff members. Another centre took over our role of supplying resources to schools, and that was absolutely wonderful. It was a real weight off our shoulders. We were unsure of how much stock we had lost in our collection, and we're still unsure because many schools had liquefaction, or many teachers have moved out of Christchurch and taken our stock with them. So the impact on staff, about 3 weeks later, there was a sense of the importance of returning to work and a sense of setting up normal life again. When schools started again, they were stressful places for teachers. Some parents dropping off their children, their 5 and 6 year olds, wanted to stay there all day just in case another earthquake came. I placed some of my staff in schools just assisting with literacy, reading to children, just talking, helping with information literacy, and that was a fantastic learning experience. We had to be adaptive in our challenges. At first, however, there was an uncertainty on, would I get paid? I work for the government, will I get paid? I'm not working. And once we were assured we would, that almost was a sense of relief. So several staff worked in public libraries or schools. Some staff helped. Schools had to join together in some instances, so some staff helped in adding new students to library management systems or helping a school RFID their library. But every day was different. I had 12 staff reporting to me, and I had to work out on a kind of a weekly basis who would be going where and when for how long. And in a way, this might sound a bit crass, but in a way I felt like a pimp sending people out on different places and monitoring what they were doing. So this is a couple of staff members working in schools. Michelle at the bottom, the one who lived in New Brighton, her son's school was closed in the CBD. They set up merged schools, morning schools and afternoon schools. So her son went to a brand new school with all of his other school members from 1 to 5 each day. They had to travel an hour across the city. For Michelle, she had to take her son and other people in her car, so she ended up working at the school for 3 months. For her, it was a huge learning experiment. It was like a placement in a school, but also exhausting. For the team, there was the importance of weekly meetings, and this was our first meeting post-February 22nd earthquake. We were going to meet in a cafe, but it seemed everyone else wanted to meet in that same cafe, so we met on a lawn outside. and a circle. And it was important just to discuss where we're going, what's happening, to update on our building and what was happening to our building. And also to do that proactive mentoring to find out the emotional state of people. Then, in May, we were given an opportunity, a mission, to retrieve the resources from our building. We were given 6 hours to do this. We tried to do it in April, but more aftershocks came, so May. The manager called us up at 7 in the morning. This is the day, get ready, come, this is what you need. We had to retrieve 130,000 resources and equipment from the building, and we did it. We drew up a plan. There were battles between insurance companies. One insurance company, of course, our insurance company wanted us to get all the resources out as much as possible. The insurance company from the building didn't want us to get anything out. So there's all these battles going on. We had to hire an engineer. An engineer had to fly down from Auckland, and he was charging $4,000 for the day. A local engineer was going to charge $20,000 for the day. So there's all these other battles going on. So these are just some images. So we hired these big burly men to go into the building with wheelbarrows. We bought blankets to line the wheelbarrows because they had been used for liquefaction. We had hired 100 containers to put the books in and additional containers to put other items in, such as phones. I had tried to get other wheelbarrows, but at the time I was told there was only 10 left in Christchurch available to hire. It was a fantastic effort working together. It gave us hope. And for some of the colleagues, they said it was therapeutic. It was a sense of moving forward. As I mentioned, schools merged. Now, Burnside High School is one of our biggest schools. I think it's got 1,500 students. It became a morning school, went from 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock, and then Burnside girls, who hadn't seen the boys, because Burnside High was co-ed, came in the afternoon, and there was a lot of talking in between times. Other schools just joined together, primary schools just joined together. Teachers had to monitor student behaviour. Some primary school teachers said, watching the girls play with their Barbies, all of a sudden the Barbies would dive under the table because an aftershock was coming. So behaviour was changing. Teachers were tired and stressed. For them, there was an unknown end point. Students were stressed and parents were stressed. We mentioned social media. After the February earthquake, I had my daughter stay with me for a while, and she's in her 20s. She joined a Twitter group when there was ongoing aftershocks. They called it Twitter poker, to guess the size of the aftershock before it came on the website and told you. And that was late at night. And for her, she said it was a sense of being part of a group and not being isolated. So social media was used in different ways. For myself, as a team leader at National Library, there was a willingness to work with our public library colleagues. Prior to this, there had been almost a sense of small competition, but there was a willingness to work together. So we brainstormed on what we thought our clients needed. It actually wasn't what they needed in the end, but there was a willingness to work together and share facilities. We were sharing their facilities. But I think 5 aspects were critical to success. It was being flexible, at all times being flexible, not knowing what the end was going to be. It was securing communication channels, all forms, external, internal, emails, websites, phone, using all the types of communication channels you could think of. Willingness to work together with people you didn't think you would have worked together before a disaster. We also received generous support and kindness from our other National Library colleagues. Our Auckland colleagues sent us down food baskets, which was lovely, lots of chocolate, and it was lovely. Plus, for me, being aware that emotional intelligence, just keeping track of people in your team at all times. And of course, finding meaningful work for people in the 6 months that we were out of our building. I'm just looking at the clock. Most of my team were sick at some stage, stress-related. They had time off, depression, etc. Because for everyone, a sense of norm was disrupted. Everybody had a broken home, not as in people leaving, but the house was cracked. And not a crack house. It's all these different terms. But everybody had something going on in their life. Normally, I was thinking this morning, if you're a manager, you might have 1 or 2 people with issues in their life. You know, someone's sick or something's happening. But everybody in my team had something going on. It was just keeping up to date with that. Then it was sourcing a new building, and my manager started looking almost straight away for a new building, and that was hard because everybody else was looking for a new space as well. That was hard. So we came across this concrete, ugly but new building in a business park. There were 16 units. Prior to the earthquake, only 2 were occupied. Straight after the earthquake, they were all signed up, just about. So we had to set up a timeline. It was my job to look after the staff. My manager decided why he would start setting up this new building and getting the timeline in place. So it was a good looking forward. After we had the carpet down, the shelves in place, etc., we brought the books back from the collection, books back from storage. And so it took us, I think, 3 months to go through a process where we brought people back on task and we put the books, because some were damaged, some were mouldy, some had rubble amongst them, we had to put them through a cleaning and scanning process. It took us 3 months and we tried to do 3 containers a day. It was a really boring task, cleaning books and sorting books, but we achieved it. Each container held about 600 books. And this is our new premises that we opened in December, just prior to Christmas. We have brand new shelving that is bolted to the floor. It's also bolted overhead. And the staff was so keen to get back to something that was normal. And to actually also change behaviours. It's a good opportunity to change behaviours and look at things in different ways. Recently, Christchurch, I'm not going to say, we had an anniversary for February the 22nd. And you can tell by the emotion on some of these people's faces that the impact of the earthquake is still there. It's still alive. But it will pass, I'm sure. Thank you.